Well, welcome back to everyone from the different breakout rooms here for our summing up. We're going to do just a brief round of recaps of what was said in each of the different plenaries so that everyone is up to date. Claire, I'm going to start with you, since you were talking about putting technological innovation at the service of the global fight against IP crime. I had half an ear on this one, and I heard lots of mentions of things like blockchain and innovative solutions. So tell us, what was the main points that came out?
Yes. So the breakout session focused quite heavily on the blockchain, and especially on the project which has been developing over the last years with involvement of some of our panelists. And we had a representative from a right holder from Mercedes-Benz. We had representative from a logistic operator, Air France KLM Cargo, a representative from Dutch Customs, so law enforcement authorities, and a colleague from the US Department of State. So we had also the US perspective. So, and here the idea was to also explain how concretely we can make things happen in the authentication platform. We have tried to test involving right holder, logistic operator, law enforcement authorities. And the contribution we heard paved the way to show that we can improve and make the logistic flow more effective. So the key point also was to ensure that we keep the public-private cooperation effective, and this is a crucial point which was highlighted. Also, what has been shown is that we need to make it simple, interoperable. We should not expect stakeholders to change the way they have been operating, because that would be too costly and too complicated. The question of cost was also highlighting, especially in relation to the return on investment. And here were mentioned the speed of logistics, the more efficient risk assessment. So, so room to further the discussion. We had a few time to discuss other challenges regarding technology, especially artificial intelligence. And here the question also was trust. How to improve and put trust in the artificial intelligence ecosystem. Voilà. So more to come.
Well, and I apologize, Claire, I didn't formally announce you, mainly because you need no introduction, of course. Claire Castell, Head of Service from the EUIPO Observatory. I'm going to turn now to Pinuccia Contino, Head of Unit in DG Just in the European Commission, who had the task of moderating the breakout session on consumers' health and safety. I am sure there was a lot said there.
Absolutely, Jennifer. And actually, it was so incredibly lively that that's why we were late, sorry. And so the point is that when we talk about counterfeit goods, of course, we presume that they are unsafe, that they're dangerous. But interestingly enough, our consumers, and especially young consumers, don't necessarily believe that. So the issue was, how can we make, first of all, more space for gathering data, evidence, so that we can scientifically demonstrate this, also considering that different products have different features. And so, for example, toys, as one of our speakers explained, are quite easily, understandably, if they're counterfeit, they must be dangerous. So consumers, in particular parents, would understand this very easily. But how can we convince teenagers who buy fake brands for clothes or purses not to buy those, because they are aware that they are buying counterfeit? So we had a very interesting discussion on how we can improve the messages, in particular referring to whatever is already available, statistically speaking, in the safety gate on dangerous and fake products, and how we can improve this data evidence through more cooperation between the different authorities, customs, different international organizations. We also had a speaker from the WCO, and with the help, of course, of what consumer organizations and organizations dealing with consumer complaints, like the ECC Netto, which was also represented on the panel, can give as indications of trends, of possible avenues to explore. And there, for example, sustainability can also be a very important avenue, because maybe we cannot convince teenagers for the moment that buying fake clothes is dangerous, but we can convince them with good evidence that those clothes are not sustainable. So that was really very lively, and I'm sure that we will have a lot of follow-up discussions now during lunchtime and later on, because we can definitely do more to make sure that fake products, counterfeit products, don't cause harm to consumers. Because one of the conclusions was also that when that happens, it's already too late.
Absolutely. Finally, Piotr Straszowski, Head of Unit, Working Party on Countering Illicit Trade at the OECD. You had the task of moderating international cooperation on trade. Now, I'm sure that was a very political debate you had, so tell us what was said.
Well, thank you. It was political, but also difficult, right? Because trade is everything. Not only trade in counterfeit goods, but also trade in illicit goods. It's difficult to look for counterfeits in trade for many reasons. Firstly, counterfeits look like genuine goods. On the scanner, they look normally. Secondly, it's very time-consuming and costly in terms of resources to do these inspections. In our panel, we had a Bulgarian customs delegate who mentioned that in a border crossing between Turkey and Bulgaria, a truck leaves every 20 seconds. I was disturbed to learn that. And this is great, because trade is great, but it poses huge challenge onto enforcement. So in our panel, we had also great delegates from Korean IP office and from private sector, and that highlights that there are many stakeholders to address effectively illicit trade in fake products. There are stakeholders from national agencies, and that includes, of course, IP offices and enforcement, international organizations, and private sector. And we should keep in mind that time and resources are the factor. So all these stakeholders should work together to maximize efficiency of outcomes. To do this, they should think out of the box, right? They should not only focus on their narrow mandates, but should proactively reach out to other partners. And of course, EUIPO is a great example for this. But the EUIPO was providing really fascinating examples about training locally and internationally, or collaboration with police. At the same time, closer to the scope of trade, it's been said many times that criminals exploit gaps created by, well, fantastic trade facilitation procedures, new logistical procedures. So simplified procedures are good for trade, but also for bad trade, for trade in counterfeits. There is this trade-off that we should keep in mind. And to answer this, we should help enforcement. Private sector was highlighting, INTA was highlighting, well, the crucial elements of information, good quality information, potential use of technology. But then we arrived at the issue of standards, standardization of legislations, standardization of implementation of these legislations, and coordination of all these efforts, so we're not standalone. And last but not least, evidence, right? Something that's been said throughout this meeting. Here in this room, we all know that counterfeiting is a threat that doesn't only hit at the heart of innovation, but also creates a big threat to consumers, to the environment. It's a universal threat. But we must have robust, solid evidence that we can bring out of this room and share this with the general public. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. Any questions from the floor? I have to be brief, but if you have any comments or questions, let's get a microphone down here to the front. Just a comment on our breakout sessions.
Hello, Sorin Mirla from Infocons, Consumers Organization. In the safety gate, maybe you can have some gate for the counterfeiting product, but not for the counterfeiting alert, maybe for tips for the consumers to have be careful in the moment they can buy? And the second, what you think about the educational campaign, and not only the education to change the mentality for the consumers, to take the attitude in the moment they are see a counterfeiting product or they are buy a counterfeiting product and they have a problem with them. They can make a complaint or no?
Well, Panucha, I mean, it's whether this came up in the breakout session. Was this a sort of an issue that people discussed?
So we definitely talked about the safety gate and the fact that already now you can see when the authorities, the market surveillance authorities, have assessed a product as dangerous and they realize that it's also counterfeit, it's written there. So you can find it explicitly. Of course, as also the other chairs were saying, not all authorities are experts in everything. So when they're not sure, either they don't say it or they just say suspect counterfeit. But there we have a start of the reflection. The second point, of course, yes, we discussed about how to nuance the communication messages depending on the nature of the product, because the same message will not convince consumers in the same way for different kinds of products, as I was explaining before. And definitely we want to work more together with the CCNet, together with the industry. We had the representative from Mattel explaining also how certain things can be more easily conveyed for toys. For the latter point, we will need to discuss more because for the moment there is not a connection in the safety gate and in the legislation on product safety directly on counterfeit. We cannot take as a basis the fact that it's counterfeit. It must be dangerous. That's why we were talking about gathering evidence on the intersection between the two.
Any other questions or comments for our chairs? I don't see any hands going up. I think then we've probably covered it. I'm thinking, Claire, perhaps a final word on whether the blockchain and the innovative solutions in your panel might be able to solve some of the issues presented in the other two breakout sessions. I'm thinking, with trade or with, keeping a database of dangerous goods that might damage consumers.
Well, that's a tricky question. I think the key point here is trust. If we introduce trust in the system, trust for consumers, trust for law enforcement authorities, trust for logistic operators, and everybody is key to have this. That will be good, and we hope we can prove it and have something to show as a pilot by the end of the year.
Well, that's an optimistic note. Piotr, an optimistic note from you to end on?
Well, there is trust. There is trust, and we are here in this room in a trust-based environment, right? And we are not unique. So Blockathon, blockchain is a great tool. Together with the trust that we have here, there is a way forward.
Okay, thank you very much. A big round of applause for our chairs for their sterling work.